Hello participants, in this session we will be discussing ICT for Instructional Planning. I am Dr. Bharti Dogra from School of Education, IGNOU. It's a very common scenario that after getting a teaching assignment, a teacher might think that I am very experienced and I know these topics very well. So in that case, I don't have to plan my classroom teaching learning and I can enter into my classroom without any planning. So do you all agree with this? That no instructional planning is required in case a teacher is highly experienced? So let us see the relevance of the importance of instructional planning in this session. First, what is the meaning of instruction? Before discussing instructional planning, let us explore the meaning of instruction. Instruction is a planned arrangement of experiences to help a learner develop understanding and to achieve a desirable change in behavior. That means it refers to the teaching learning process. What is instructional planning? Instruction planning means a teacher visualizes and forecasts into why, what and how of teaching learning process. Now what is why of teaching learning process? It refers to the analysis of needs of the learners. And what of teaching learning process? It means formulating objectives and designing learning experiences. And how refers to selecting methods, media and evaluation procedures. What is need of instructional planning? Why do we need to do the instructional planning? Instruction planning, when it is done, it gives direction to teachers, students and all other stakeholders. It also gives us an insight about the broader educational goals, and in case instructional planning is done, then we can save our efforts, cost and also time of teachers as well as of students. Then when you are planning, then the probability of mistakes decreases, and it is also a good source of feedback to teachers on their own teaching, as well as they also get a feedback about the learning or the performance of the students. When we talk about instructional planning, we start from the planning of a course, move to the planning of a unit because there are many units in a course, and we further move down to sub-unit plan and finally lesson plan. There are many lesson plans in a unit. Now what are the steps of instructional planning? As far as the process of instructional planning is concerned, we start with a suitable theme, topic or a problem. Then we decide on the goals of the unit and the specific learning objectives, they are derived from the goals of the unit. Then we detail the instructional procedures which will be used for transacting the unit, provide for instructional materials and media, and then plan for pre-assessment and assessment of student learning. Let us now discuss, as previously we discussed that we start with a course, then we come to unit and finally lesson planning. So let us now discuss what are the different steps in lesson planning. While mentioning the different steps in lesson planning, we can divide them into the planning of the lesson required before the class, during the class and the planning required after the class. Let us first discuss what lesson planning is required before the class. So before planning the class, first is identify the learning objectives. This is a very crucial step. This provides direction. And what is a learning objective, how are learning objectives written. They are written in the behavioral terms using action words, and a learning objective, it describes what the learner will know or will be able to do. That means what behaviors will be demonstrated by the learners after the learning experience has been given to them. And we are not emphasizing in the learning objectives what the learner will be exposed, that what kind of learning experiences will be given to during the instruction. So it's always written that the learner will be able to explain, the learner will be able to demonstrate, the learner will be able to define. So the learning objectives are always written in the behavioral terms. For example, marginalization, because I will be discussing this topic, the concept map on this particular topic will be discussed later. So plan the specific learning activities. Once I have identified the learning objectives for a topic or a theme or a problem, next is planning specific learning activities. When we are planning the specific learning activities, we are expected to answer certain questions. Now, what are these questions? First of all, what will I do to explain the topic? What will I do to illustrate the topic in a different way? How can I engage students in the topic? Now, depending upon the topic, when I know the content, then I know my learners very well. So, I have to think about the strategies that how can I make them collaborate? How can I encourage teamwork? How can I have discussions in the class? Can I have online discussion forum? So I have to think of different ways in which I can engage the students, especially related to that topic. Then what are the relevant real life examples? Can I give some real life stories? Can I give certain analogies or cite certain situations that can help students understand the topic? So what will students need to do to help them understand the topic better? Then after identification of the objectives and after designing the activities, thinking about the experiences, then next comes the assessment. And assessment can take place through summative assessment methods and the formative assessment. Summative assessment takes place once your learning experiences are over, and maybe after few lesson plans a summative assessment can be given. Whereas formative assessment, this is not a separate assessment, this is inbuilt in teaching learning process. How is it possible? A teacher is teaching in the class, given the learners group work. So while the students are engaged in the group work, the assessment can be done through observation, and for that purpose the rubrics can be used. Then comes the steps in lesson planning, which take place during the class teaching learning process. Now the teachers must explicitly tell the students what they will be learning and doing in the class. These are advanced organizers. Then another expectation from the teachers is meaningful organization of the class time, because when the class time is meaningfully utilized, then this helps the learners in remembering the concepts along with understanding the rationale behind the planned learning activities. Next is after the class. What are the steps in lesson planning after the class? Now after every class, teacher can spend few minutes for reflecting on what worked well and why, and can things be done differently. Suppose a classroom discussion was held in the class. Now once the class is over, teacher can think about the participation in the discussion. Were all the students involved? Were some students shy? Is it possible to use certain other strategies instead of discussion? Can I use something else? If there are certain students who are not ready to participate, can I involve them through other methods? So this kind of reflection is required. In case a teacher can identify successful and less successful organization of class time and activities, then it will help in better adjustment to the contingencies of the classroom. The teacher can also receive the feedback on the lesson plan. Now next we are moving to ICT in lesson planning. So far we have discussed different steps: identification of the learning objectives, planning specific learning activities and also conducting them, then student assessment and reflection and introspection. Now can we use ICT in different steps of the lesson planning? Yes, we can use ICT in different stages of lesson planning. First, ICT can be used in the identification of the learning objectives. How is it possible? There are various open educational resources available. Teacher can go through the content as well as the learning objectives. These resources can help the teacher in understanding the writing of objectives in behavioral terms, and if these objectives can be adapted for the content selected by the teacher, so that adaptation is also possible. Then ICT can also be used in planning and conducting the specific learning activities, because in this particular case again different resources can be utilized. The online forums can be used, flipped learning environment can be used, video can be given followed by discussion, then online presentations can be used. There are various ways in which ICT can be used in planning and conducting the specific learning activities related to the content selected. ICT can be used in the student assessment. During observation, the rubrics can be used. Assessment again can be done through the video making. Students can be given a task that you make a video for 2 minutes, and in that video take an interview of another student, or a group work or panel discussion, or the Google form can be given and survey can be done, then blogs can be maintained. So there are different ways in which ICT can be used for the purpose of student assessment. Then online diaries, online journals can be maintained for reflection or introspection. Instructional planning using a concept map. Participants, here I am showing a concept map. This concept map helps in the instructional planning, the complete instructional planning of a topic understanding marginalization. Now through this concept map, the pedagogic analysis is done. Now what is pedagogic analysis? Pedagogic analysis means when you choose a topic and you do its analysis, keeping in mind the science of teaching, that is pedagogy. Pedagogy is art and science of teaching. So here in this concept map we can see that the objectives for teaching marginalization, understanding marginalization are taken. The different objectives are explain the concept of marginalization, elaborate reasons why people are marginalized, cite examples of people who have been marginalized, state the consequences of marginalization of different communities. As we discussed earlier that we start with a topic, theme or a problem, and then the identification of the learning objectives. So for this particular topic, understanding marginalization, I have written 4 objectives. So any topic can be taken and the objectives can be identified. Next is the content analysis. The survey of the content is done, and it is broken down into the manageable chunks. Then keeping in mind the hierarchy of the different concepts, we arrange them into the bigger concept, and then we have the smaller concepts below the bigger concept, and the relationship between the concepts or the ideas is established. So, we have in the content analysis, in this particular concept map there are 3 concepts. Concept of marginalization, which is further broken down to the meaning of concept of marginalization, then its various forms, reasons for concept of marginalization and the consequences. Then second concept which is identified in the content analysis of understanding marginalization is Adivasis. Then who are Adivasis, where are they settled, stereotypes associated with them. And the third concept which is identified in the content analysis is minority groups. So, again different minority groups can be identified depending upon the content. Then comes the instructional media, that for teaching this topic, understanding marginalization, what instructional media can be utilized. Now, it could be, I have written here textbook, video clips and handouts. It could be any instructional media, it could be the digital media, it could be the open educational resources, it could be the reference material, it could be the videos, it could be the podcasts, it could be the anything which is related to the topic chosen. Then comes the instructional methods. What are the different instructional methods chosen for teaching understanding marginalization? And this is lecture cum discussion, case studies, role plays, assignments. So, again different instructional methods can be identified for this particular topic depending upon the availability of different methods and the target group and also the competence of the teacher. Then finally, we have assessment. So, for this particular topic, the assessment of the content analysis can be done through the rating scale, performance assessment, group work through the rubrics and observations through the rubrics. So, this is how a topic can be selected. It could be a theme, topic or a problem, and its pedagogic analysis including identification of objectives, content analysis, instructional media, instructional methods and assessment can be done. Now, in the concept map we have discussed content analysis as a part of the concept map prepared for instructional planning. Let us now discuss what is content analysis. Content analysis means when we acquire an in-depth knowledge and understanding of the content or the subject matter. So, it includes surveying a large amount of content and identifying how to segment it into meaningful, manageable chunks or parts. And a content analysis is pre-instructional analytic planning tool. That means this kind of instructional pre-instructional analysis is done before the actual transaction of the curriculum. Now, here we have a concept map. The concept map which we used previously for instructional planning. So, I have picked up the content analysis and this is done here the details are being shown in this particular slide. Content analysis, as we discussed earlier, concept of marginalization, Adivasis and minority groups. So, minority groups are also mentioned here, and Adivasis, who are Adivasis, places where they are found, stereotypes associated with them, and then the other areas which are kept under concept of marginalization. This is another concept map developed by Novick and Govin, and it is showing content analysis, and the topic is the waste water treatment. So, you can see that wastes, they contain water and solids. So, solids can further be classified into organic and inorganic. Organic are dissolved gases and minerals, they are examples, and inorganic wastes can be classified into pathogens, toxic and non-pathogens, and then their examples. Then another concept map on food chains, this is a small unit. Food chains, we have producers, we have consumers, then again producers. And producers, they prepare their food through the process of photosynthesis. Consumers are of three types: herbivores, carnivores and omnivores. Herbivores are eaten by carnivores, carnivores are eaten by the omnivores. Then the producers, after they die, their dead bodies are decomposed. Concept map on components of food, again another concept map. This is a small unit, and we can see the macronutrients, micronutrients, macronutrients being classified into carbohydrates, fats and proteins, which are further classified. The carbohydrates are can be divided into simple and complex. Fats can be divided into saturated and unsaturated fats. Proteins, on the basis of their source, that whether the source is plants or animals, and then their examples. And micronutrients, we have vitamins and minerals. Vitamins can be further classified as being water soluble and fat soluble, and minerals are macro minerals and trace minerals, and their examples. Participants, in this session we have discussed that what is instruction, what is instructional planning, why do we need instructional planning, what are the different steps in instructional planning. The instructional planning can be done at the course level, at the unit level, at the lesson level. We have discussed different steps involved in lesson planning. There are certain planning steps which are required before the class, planning required during the class, and planning can also be done after the class. ICT can be used for instructional planning at different stages, for identification of learning objectives, for designing learning activities, for assessment, and also for reflection and introspection. Then we can prepare a concept map using CMap or Free Mind. The instructional planning can be done through a concept map, and the content analysis can also be done using a concept map. Concept maps can be prepared through CMap software or Free Mind, and this makes the task easier. So that's all about this session. Thank you very much.